Now? Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome with the, I guess it's the third session we have in the whole conference track on identity management and identity protocols. And well, we are going to dedicate this one to one of the horrors of the apocalypse that Josh was mentioning this morning, this EduGain. Well, for those of you not aware of it, EduGain is the identity infrastructure we are building inside Gen 2. And well, to put a human face on top of this horse of the apocalypse, what we have looked for three of the people who are daily dealing with EduGain, building it, building services on top and besides it, to show you the main characteristics of how EduGain is now working. Well, the first speaker is working with me in Rediris. He's Ajay Daryanani. He has been working with us, well, since he joined Rediris, has been working with us in identity management, and he's one of the main developers of the EduGain guts. So, Ajay, please.
Hello. Hi. Okay. It works. Hello, everyone. My name is Ajay Daryanani. I work as a middleware engineer at Rediris, the Spanish Enron. And today, I'm not going to bore you with the insights of EduGain. I mean, the protocol, the technology, the source code. I'm going to bore you with something different, which has a higher level view with the components, the building blocks, and the projects where EduGain has been enhanced and showing that it's something that we have tested, we have deployed, and it really works. So for those of you who are not aware of EduGain, what EduGain is, I introduce EduGain in base of the concepts, the architecture, the idea which is behind EduGain. Then we show the application of EduGain in real life, some frequently asked questions that I get from people whom I explain EduGain to, and then the future plans we have in our team, development team, for next years in EduGain. So first thing I have to say that EduGain is being developed inside the JRI5 activity, which is part of the Jean 2 project, and it's a distributed development between different enrons in Europe. If we had to resume what EduGain is in one sentence, we should say that EduGain federates federations. A federation is a set of institutions collaborating together with trust management and trust links between them to share users and services among them. So EduGain builds on top of that. You leave the policies, the technology of your inside federation, and just open the access to some different federations, keeping those trust links. We can see EduGain has three legs. It's a software, federation software, which is built on top, which is placed on top of the existing federation. It's an infrastructure with a trust fabric to keep the trust between the messages and the users and the services which are interacting inside EduGain. And it's also a technology which is based on standards and well-known protocols as SAML, X509 certificates, web services security, and the like. So I'm not going to go too deep into these components, but the general architecture you have in EduGain is this one. You have your federations, which belong to the home domain or remote domain. Your federation can work on both sides. If your users access services in another federation, you are a home institution. If you are enabling your resource to foreign users, you act as a remote domain. But each federation can have these two faces inside EduGain. So you leave the home domains, the domains as they are, and you build the components, EduGain components, on top of them. We have the bridging elements. We're in charge of translating from the local protocol to the EduGain protocol. You have a federation peering point or federation publishing point, which publishes metadata that contains information about the federation. And then you have a centralized metadata service. More in detail, bridging elements, as I said before, what they do is to translate internal federation communication into edugain communication. That is, if I access a resource which is in a remote domain, that domain may work with different AI software, Shibboleth, PAPI. You can use simple assignment PHP. You can use aselect, AAI at EduHR, you name it. There is a bridging element that may translate that protocol into edugain. Then, if the request goes to the home bridging element, that communication is edugain, which is actually, right now SAML 1.1, and we are moving on to SAML 2.0 soon. And when the request arrives at the home domain, the home bridging element translates that request from SAML 1.1 into the local protocol. Bridging elements can also query the metadata service in order to discover which federations are inside the infrastructure, because otherwise there would be no means for the remote bridging elements to send the users back to the home institution to get authenticated. So the federation peering points or publishing points, they are in charge. There may be one or more federation peering points per federation, but what they do is gather all the metadata inside one federation and publish it into the MDS. And that metadata has to be signed in order to provide trust over that metadata. Metadata should include information of the interfaces in your federation which are available for edugain users. Identity providers, service providers, attribute authorities, the organizational info, who's responsible technically for that infrastructure, contact information, and so on. And then that metadata has to be published into a centralized component, which is the metadata service, or MDS, which stores and allows the retrieving of that metadata to other entities. It also allows to search for, if you put a home domain, it gives you back the federation who is in charge of that home domain, or you can use home locators, you can search by federation, and you have different options to use this metadata service. This picture is here just to show that you may have any internal structure in your federation. You may have different IDPs, as many IDPs as you want, as many SPs as you want, but edugain can be used to be enhanced inside your federation the way you want. You can have a centralized structure like on the left picture, where all the SPs and IDPs in your federation depend on one single BE, or you can have a more distributed approach, where each SP or IDP can be protected, can depend on different BEs. So you have your structure. We don't mind. edugain can be used inside any structure you have in your internal federation. So I hope I've made somehow clear how edugain works in a few slides. And now we're going to see how these protocols and components have been used to provide confederated communication to resources. So we have two ways of looking at how we've been using this. There are components and there are applications or projects. So we see that the trust fabric inside edugain consists of a URN registry and the edugain PKI. We are building where are you from server, which relies on the metadata server, the edugain filter, which is a filter for servlet for application servers, and the project that we have been working with to integrate edugain to provide these AAI capabilities to their services. For instance, Autobahn, which is developed by Jira 3 inside Jan 2, web applications, and then my colleagues will present afterwards Professor and Dame. So, the URN registry. In our trust fabric, each component inside edugain, no matter whether it is a bridging element, the metadata server, the federation peering point, a single IDP, a single SP, must have a unique way of identifying them. We have based that on URNs. Of course, those URNs should be registered somewhere. So we've built a URN registry. The URN follows this kind of syntax: URN, geant, edugain, component, and then you place the name of the component, then the federation which is in charge of that component, and an identifier to differentiate between components inside the same federation. A good feature of this URN registry, which was built by Cándido Rodríguez, is that it can be delegated. There's no one single person who is in charge of issuing all the URNs, but you can rely on a federation to issue the URNs for their internal use. For that, you need some kind of web services that you may deploy in your federation, which are available through the registry software. Also, the validation of the messages exchanged in an edugain interaction need to verify that the URN is registered somewhere, and that is good and valid. So we need some kind of interaction between a component, not the user, but the machine, to contact the URN registry in order to see if that URN is valid or not. So the URN registry has been prepared to produce XML output, which can be easily parsed. Well, XML is never easy, but it can be parsed by a machine automatically without a user intervention. And if you want to take a look at how the registry looks, you have the URL down there. The other component of the edugain trust fabric is the edugain PKI. So when you register a URN, you have to embed that URN in a certificate, usually issued by edugain SCA, which is the central, which is the highest CA in the hierarchy. And as well as, just as the registry, URN registry, the CAs, the RAs can be delegated. So there's no central point, but each federation can have their own RA to speed up the issuing of the certificates. The PKI software is also available. That's the URL you can visit to see how this works and to ask for delegation of a registry or to register your certificates. And one important feature of edugain is that it can use other PKIs apart from the edugain PKI. It just relies on the component validating the message to have the roots of trust of the certificate who is signing the message. Those certificates must comply to conditions. One of them is to include a proper URN. It doesn't have to be an edugain URN. It can be any kind of URN as long as you provide it. But it also should comply to the edugain PMA policy when it's ready. So when a message arrives, you have to validate the message. You have to validate different things. First, you have to verify that the signature of the message is correct. You have to prove that the certificate has been issued by a registered CA to a trustable CA. You have to check that the certificate has not been rejected, so you consult the CRL, and that the URN has been registered and available at the URN registry. Okay, so now we're going to move into something a bit more end-user focused. I want to show this interaction first. No, we'll go back to the edugain architecture picture. This one will be okay. So the flow of information in an edugain web single sign-on profile, the user will access a remote domain, and that remote domain has to locate the user. Where are you from? Where have you come from? Where should I send you back so that you get authenticate at your home domain? Well, that information is available at the MDS, but you don't want users to check SAML2 metadata, which is XML-based. It's not user-friendly, and it will never be user-friendly. So you need some means to provide interfaces for the users, easy of use for the users to select which federation they belong to and at which IDP they should be authenticated. So based on the MDS, which is the component on the right, which contains SAML2 metadata, we are implementing a Java servlet. Milan Sovalles is Java again, Normal PHP is Java, although you don't like it very much, I think. And this servlet has some method which will connect to the MDS, retrieve the metadata, and parse it and transform it to something that this component on the left side can use. We think a good approach would be to show this European map or a map where the available federations are located using HTML and AJAX. So you can see the events that have been, through JavaScript events, you can highlight the available federations and some information. So this interface will query the servlet in order to ask for some information, give me the available federations, give me the available IDPs for this federation, give me the information for this organization, give me what information you want. So users in this interface can select in an easy way where they come from. This highlights the federations or the countries who have a federation which had published metadata by as of last week. I think 1 week ago I drew this picture. This is static. This should be something dynamic, but it's still a prototype and we're working on it. So at that time, several federations had published information at the MDS. We have Uninet in Norway, we have Dante, we have DFN in Germany, we have Switch, we have AAI at EduHR in Croatia, we have Rediris in Spain. So if you could could put your mouse over a federation, that should show some information about the federation. Organizational info, IDPs. So then the educating component can see, okay, you belong to this federation, I'm going to send you back there. This map will evolve. It lacks one thing, and it's the Canary Islands, which would be located down here, which is my hometown, and I will be sure that the Canary Islands will be there. A different matter will be to which federation it belongs to. If we count for population, you could say it may be England or Germany. But politically, it will be in the Spanish Federation. Next component, the EduGain filter. It's an implementation of the JavaX servlet filter interface, which can be used inside any application container which implements the servlet 2.3 or above API. What we can get from this is that we can protect single resources without any federation software and make it available through EduGain. No more. You don't need below shibboleth, you don't need PAPI, you just need this component. So it makes it easy to deploy. And you don't have to build this internal infrastructure, AAI, in your federation if you don't have one. You just have a resource, you want to, for people from other federations to access your single resource, you deploy this component, and this will act as a remote bridging element. If you want to take a look at it, it's still in a beta version. You may look at it at the Gian2 SVN. Now, moving on to the applications. One of them is Autobahn, which is development for JRA3 in Gian2. What they tackle is bandwidth reservation on demand. So a user may want to do a bandwidth reservation from one domain to another domain. That link may cross different domains. So they create a circuit between the first point and the end point, and access to that reservation should be somehow identified. You have to see if the user has got the right to access that system. So what we have used for this, by the way, this information was an extract from a presentation by Victor Reyes from HINET. He presented at TNC 2007. So what we have done is, as Autobahn components are there's one domain manager, which is the first component the user will access in order to make a bandwidth reservation, and inter-domain managers at each domain from where the link will go through. So first thing a user will do is will try to access the interface to make the bandwidth reservation. The bridge protected with the EduGain filter. The EduGain filter will say, okay, where are you from? I'm from this federation. Okay, go to your federation, authenticate there, and come back. So Edugain filter will say, okay, I have received an okay. Your authentication at your home institution is okay. I have your attributes. I'm going to pass it to the domain manager. The user will then fill in the form for his reservation. The domain manager will create a web services request and will forward it to the next component. But inside this web services request, the domain manager will integrate the user attribute. I have to speed up a bit, I think. So that message with the user information will go to the into the domain manager. It will say, okay, the message is correct, the user attributes are correct, I will grant access to him, so I'm going to send the forwarded request to the next component until it reaches the end, and then it goes back. When the DM gets an okay from all components, it will say, okay, you are an authenticated user, here is your bandwidth reservation. So, more applications, web single sign-on applications. These have been highly tested. We are using it inside Jean2, inside the GRI5 activity. We have protected wikis like the GRI5 wiki, demo wiki in FADE, FlySpray, OTRS, which is an open source ticket request system that is going to be used, if I'm not wrong, for EduRoam ticketing system. Some other software that is federated and is candidate to be confederated via Edugain. There are 2 links where you can see the list of applications. And from our experience, what we have learned here is that we need attribute conversion because not all the federations have the same schemas inside their identity providers. Some use EduPerson, some use Shack, some use IRIS schemas. So we need to translate that into something that everybody understands. So we are working on attribute conversion, attribute filtering, access policies for different services, and we have learned that it works. If I have time, I will do a demo at the end, but I don't think there will be time. Okay, so I have bored you now for 20 minutes almost. Olivier, can you play the video, please? So whenever I speak about Edugain, I get some different reactions. Some people just run away from the hall. Other people fall asleep. Other people are clapping because they understand it and they like it very much. But the most common reaction is this one. This means, what are you telling me? I don't understand a thing of what you said. So could we go back to the presentation, please? So for that, I wrote some frequently asked questions in Edugain. The first one is what I said. What the blah, blah, blah is Edugain about? It's a confederation software. It leaves your federation as is. It's built on top. It's trusted. It works. It's been tested, deployed. It's there. If you need more details, there are some presentations, some URLs, and you can watch the presentation from the beginning. Second question. Okay, I think I know what this is about. But this freak stuff really work? These strange things you do they really work? Answer is simple. Yes. We've done it, you can try it, it's there, it works, please try it. Next question. Okay, I understand it, I like it, I want to be there. What should I do? Okay, choose the software you need for your federation, so the bridging element you need, deploy it, test it, ask for a URN or for the delegation, ask for a certificate or the delegation, build your metadata, sign it, publish it, and you're there. And of course, you can use your own PKI if it complies with the Edugain PMA policy. Next question. Okay, I like it, I'm there, but actually my problem can be solved with what you've told me. What can we do now? Contact us. The project will be there in Jean3. If you request for something, we'll be there to listen to you. Okay, so quickly the future plans. We have to complete the implementation, make it stable, The release candidate 1 of Edugain is on the way. It will be available soon. You can try it, you can test it. Sorry. We have, as I said before, SAML 1.1 we're using between Edugain components communication. We have to move to SAML 2.0. It's defined, it's written, but it's not implemented. We're on the way to it. We are doing some tests with Internet 2 guys in order to prove that Shibboleth 2.0 can be a native Edugain component. We can communicate Edugain with Shibboleth directly. They're based on the same protocols, SAML 1 or SAML 2. So we're testing with them to see where do we need to adapt it to make them work together. We have to explore this issue of the dynamic metadata discovery, which seems to be fashionable these days. We have to explore new profiles and use cases. For instance, we're working with the EFDA, the European Fusion Development Agreement, to see if they have a PAPI-based federation. So we see if they can work with Edugain and if we can help them to provide confederated access to their resources and make their users access some of the services. And in Jan 3, one of the things we'll do is a transition to the service as we did with EduRoam. So to end this talk, I want to thank the JRI5 team, which is mostly in this picture. We lost, this is 2 years old, this photo. We lost one guy. One classmating is not anymore with us, but we have some good new people. Lucas Hameller from Switch, we have Torsten Kesting from DFN, we have Candido Andani from Redidis, we have Christoph Baniak from NIF, we have Dubravka Voncina from CERSE, we have some more guys. Sorry if I have forgotten the names, but it's a collaborative work. For more information, these are the URLs you may contact. Diego, do we have time for a quick demo? No? Okay, because it's good. We can access in common services in Internet 2 using Edugain. But we can do it at the end. Okay, so thank you for your attention. And any questions, please contact me.
Well, any questions for Ajay? As usual. Please, Demetrius.
In light of Shibboleth 2 newest features, some of the stuff we heard this morning, with pushing federation choices down to the organization level.
I can hear very well. Question.
I was wondering if some of the new features that Shibboleth 2 is now introducing could be relating to the work that Edugain is doing. For example, the feature of pushing down federation choices down to the organization level, whether that could be used also for unifying the management of the federation of the federations. And if you have any comments on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't really get your question. I can't hear very well from here. Could
No, Demetrius was asking was about how the new features in Shibboleth 2 can be used to enhance their interpretability with Edugain, and I guess whether these are going to influence somehow in the future of Edugain. Am I right?
Okay, thank you. I'm not really aware of the features of Shibboleth 2 because it's developed in Internet 2, and haven't looked really at Shibboleth 2. Well, I'll take a look at them, but I'm not really sure about which features, new features from Shibboleth 2 can be used in Edugain. If I'm not wrong, Shibboleth 2.0 can use self-signed certificates in some cases. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can do that in? Okay, so that's one of the issues, the usage of self-signed certificates, and not only Edugain-based Edugain SCA certificates, which we are exploring, and we are going to test with the interoperability test we're doing with Internet 2 guys. First, we're going to start the test with SAML 1.1 and usage of Edugain certificates. Once this interoperability has been tested, then we're going to see if the usage of self-signed certificates can be used also for edugain. Okay. Edugain, the infrastructure we're using, does impose some conditions on the kind of certificates that we're using, but we are open to advance in new ways of using other PKIs and even self-signed certificates. Any more?
Some more questions? Well, just to make a clarification, looking at the future of Shibboleth 2.0, they are closer to edugain than Shibboleth 1.3 was. For example, Shibboleth is now providing a better usage for attribute push that we are using in edugain as well. So I think we are getting closer than before. So we are addressing in the same direction.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you.
Well, our next speaker is working in Redis as well, and today is a very special day for him, not only because he's going to present the authentication and authorization infrastructure, or what I would say one of the best success of in the development of Jan2, which is Persona, but also because he's becoming today 29. 29 it is, right? So, well, Cándido Rodríguez is the main developer of the Persona security architecture, and will introduce how they are using edugain in the project.
Thank you, Diego. Well, I'm going to talk about our experience in Persona and how we build a new AAI there, and how we integrate the edugain infrastructure in Persona. Okay. That's the outline of my presentation. First, I want to talk about a brief overview of what is Persona. That's important to see which problem we solve in that software, and the designing and the development of the authentication, authorization infrastructure of Persona. And I want to tell you some conclusion on how I see the future of this work. Well, first, what is MDM Persona? Basically, it's a software for collecting measurements of multi-domain networks, and it's a joint effort of the JRE1, Jan2 project, Internet2, SNET, and the RMP, is the Brazilian NREN. It's an open source development, so anyone can download, install, test, modify the source code. And it was built using the service-oriented architecture model. So we have the typical web service and clients, and then the SOA message to them. And it's being used right now by Jan, Internet2, SNET, RNP, and also for most of the European NREMs. This is a list of actual partners that they are developing the service in Persona. They are testing the service. They are writing documentation. And you see, we have a big organization, but also some university. Well, as I say, Persona basically provides performance measurements in a multi-domain environment, but now in the last version, it also it's able to monitor the network. So that's the new name, the MDN, the multi-domain monitor Persona. And the project is divided in two main parts, and there is a group working in the protocol. they base on the Open Grid Forum Network Measurement Working Group schemas, which basically is XML message oriented to network software. But also there are another group working in the web services that they are developed using Java and Perl. Also, I remember one guy who want to develop in Python, and he's not Victoriano. And the thing is, we have client and service in different language. It's not an easy scenario for us. That's the framework. As you see, the lower layer is a measurement point layer, and they are some software, script, whatever they are, gathering some metrics, and they usually provide that information to the service layer that is the layer who mix that metrics, generate some information about that, some how do you say, some average of the values. And the thing is, they are deployed in different domains, but in the service layer, the service has to deal with services in other domains. And also the user interface layer, well, the typical client, the visualization tools, which interact with the services deployed in the service layer. In the last version, the 3.0, we have those services. The lookup service is something like our metadata service. It contains the list of available services around the different domains. We have the new one, authentication service, that I'm going to talk later. Measurement archive service and measurement point. The good point is all services has a web interface, web administration interface, and you see a screenshot of how to configure the authentication service in Persona, and you only have to answer 6 or 7 items. It's really easy. And also we provide WAR files, RPM, and dep package, also for Tomcat and the ExitDB. So it could be, you maybe need 10 minutes to install a full deployment of Persona. So, the interesting part for me, which problem has been solved? Well, since that we have user groups using Persona, different groups that, for example, NOC and PERT staff, project members, and user, administrative, our boss, and they have different roles. So that we should check who is accessing those services. Also, we have in mind that we find services in a multi-domain environment, so it's more complicated to say the Spanish NOC, for example, are allowed to access the French services or not. So that's a good question that we have to solve. So we know that Persona service have to be protected. It has to define which kind of message they are allowed to send, and also depend on the role they get different data. So our analysis showed that we have a very fun scenario, because we have different language for web services, we have different language for visualization tools. I think that there is one in visualization tool in Java, another one in PHP, and another one are Perl scripts. Also, we have different technologies for AAS in each domain, so it's complicated because, okay, in FADE they are using SAML, and in Spain we are using PAPI, so we have a curious problem here. It's not only the typical web-based single sign-on solution here. It's more important the non-web application here than the web one. So it's a new challenge. So our first step was developing the authentication and authorization service that is another persona service, and that was a good choice because we learned a lot about how the architecture of persona is, and that makes easier the development of components and libraries for them because we think in the same way. We are developing another service, and that's good. And the AS can be used by other service when they want for checking whether the user is authenticated or not, whether the user is allowed to do an action. That's the authorization part. And also for getting the list of available attributes for that user. And in that way, we divide the development into two parts. We focus at first on the authentication part, and the Persona 3.0 is covering only the authentication part. But now we are working with educating people on the authorization part. I think it's a more interesting area. We decided that the AS is the unique way to communicate with the educate trust model because they have a protocol oriented to network message, and it's not it doesn't make sense to mix different protocols because the complexity of the solution is not go up, and it's not I think it's not a good idea. So the AS is like a remote bridge element, and it's the persona service which send all the authentication requests, authorization requests, attribute requests to the home bridge element of the user. You can see the URL where you can find all the information about the authentication service of Persona. And what does Edugain offer Persona? Why we are using Edugain in Persona? Well, they provide us a unified framework of digital identity, and we can use the URN registry service, the PKI service, but the most important thing for us is a neutral area of identity provides a message, because as I said before, we can find IDPs which are using Shibboleth, PAPI, FADE, ACLED, and we don't want to understand all those kind of protocol. I think it's better to speak in the same language and don't lose our time making another time a bridge between Shibboleth and PAPI, Shibboleth and FADE, etc. They provide us also the metadata service, so we can check the list of available federations. They have the GEAN identity provider for homeless, which is really important, because if there is a user who wants to use Persona, but his organization hasn't still joined the Edugain, he can get a valid account using the GEAN IDP. And also we have some Java-based libraries for integrating the Edugain trust model in Persona. And of course, support for our problem, that's the most important thing. But also they provide this interesting list. We need to develop our authentication and authorization service, and that's our work. We specified 3 profiles because we find that, let me introduce the typical workflow in Personal. As you see, the client sends a message to a Personal service, and then the Personal service decides to send the authentication or the authorization request to the AES. The AES send an attribute request to the home bridge element of the user if the AES is checking the authorization or not. And well, it's return the response. The Personal service use the authentication authorization response for decide which action it should do. And maybe although the user is not authenticated, he decides to process the original message and send the response. It's its decision. But the client has to send a token representing the client or the user, and we decide to use the web service security standard. The thing is, we have different kind of clients, so we need a profile for scripts that they are software without human interaction. We need a different profile if the application is not the typical web application. So we specify those in the AES. And the first one, the authentication, the automated client profile. As you see, it's a script that needs a certificate valid in the eduGain trust model. So it means that it needs to register previously an URN, which is unique in the eduGain trust model. Send the certificate using the X905 certificate profile of web service security. And the Personal service copy that information provided in the swap header into the authentication request. The AES send the attribute request to the home bridge element if it is necessary, and send the response. The thing here is the certificate and the private and the public keys is stored in the hard drive, so you have to take care of the private key. And of course, if you generated the private key with Debian, you should read some documents about that. The user behind the client profile is the typical desktop application. Okay, for us is the most important, because the most important visualization tool of Persona is developed as a Java application distributed under Java Web Star. It's the same, but the certificate is got dynamically from an online CA. Okay, and well, when the user does some action in the client make a request to the metadata service asking the available federation in eduGain, show the list. The user choose its federation, put the username and password. Well, and it's the same. And right now we are using the SASL CF software. It's developed by one American guy. And well, maybe later I'm going to say some words about the SASL CA. The web profile, it's the typical profile that, the client is protected by the eduGain filter or simple SAML PHP, and the token is based on the SAML assertion obtained from them, and is sent using the SAML assertion profile of the web service security. But also the client needs a pair of case valid in the eduGain trust model, because it generates an assertion signed by itself including the assertion of the user. So, what I really think about this development? Well, I think we've built a full AI with minimal efforts. And I say minimal because maybe we reduce a lot the development because we provide some components for personal services, libraries for services and client, and we thought that we can integrate personal service and personal clients in our AI without understand the typical authentication authorization issues, but we were wrong and they need some support from us. But for the personal 3.0, they got to integrate the authentication process in the service and client. The bad thing is that the user behind account profile is not a good option because the organization don't like online CAs, and that's a problem. So we are working with Edugain people in developing a new profile in an EduRun style, using the same philosophy that with the radio service and so on. And I think they can provide us the technology by the ending of this year. I hope. We are working. I hope. My hope, you know. And we are working on the authorization part right now, and we are trying making easy what it isn't easy because we want to develop some components for the authorization part, and they don't need to write the typical ShackMail request that we are using that technology. And for the future, we want to work in the performance because making, for example, a signature is about 2 seconds, okay? But when a visualization tool sends 200 messages when the user clicks a button, it's not a good option to generate different signature for each message. So we need something like the typical ticket session or something like that. I think that's all. I think I'm in the time.
Thank you, Candido. Happy birthday. And, well, questions? None of you using Persona or planning to use it in the future? Any... Well, looks good. Thank you again. Well, the next speaker is the only non-Spanish of this session. Is Sasha Neinad. Is working for the University of Stuttgart. Well, he's working has been working for 2 years. Well, almost 2 years in a project that we started inside Jarifab as well, which is called DAME, about unifying single sign-on from the very low level to the network to the very high level of the application.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha Neinert. Some things. I'm from the University of Stuttgart, and I want to present an idea that is client middleware for token-based unified single sign-on to Edugain. First, I will have a few words about what single sign-on is and what the advantages and maybe also the disadvantages are. And the next, I will present what we understand when we say unified single sign-on and how this could be solved. An important part of the unified single sign-on will be something that is called EduToken, because we chose a token-based approach. And in the most detailed part, I will present the USSO profile that is token-based, and it will be a profile for EduGain. So thank you to the two speakers before me for the non-trivial task of introducing EduGain already. Yes. Single sign-on. I think it's a term that is quite often used. I like this definition. This is authenticate once for access to multiple resources. Thank you. So this is quite a general definition. When we are speaking of SSO, we are thinking more in the federated way. So SSO in a federated AI means that only one pair of credentials is really needed. This is no automated password entering or account provisioning on the fly or something like this. This is really only you have one username and one password, and you are logged in and authenticated really one time. And then you have SSO with EduGain. This is even a little bit more than a usual SSO in a federated AI, because then you have a heterogeneous environment. I think one very good feature of EduGain is that it is talking to many different AI middlewares. So it is just not, probably never will be possible to have one middleware for all of Europe and the many institutions, so we cannot just assume everyone is talking exactly the same language and has the same software installed in the same version and everything, because people are tending to like to choose their own solutions, and they end up with lots of different solutions for the same problem. So EduGain is kind of the pieces that are needed to make these different things talk together. So EduGain is kind of a way to build a confederation, and we have a SSO for logging into this confederation. There are a number of advantages in single sign-on. Most important, it is user-friendly, I think, because just it saves time. Okay, I mean, saving time is not so critical if I enter a short password. If I enter a longer password, and maybe a password that I don't use too often, and maybe even if I use different authentication methods, that can cost a lot of more time. If I use my fingerprint to identify, if I have to use it really often for quite a lot of resources that I want to access, it will be disturbing my work, and it will hinder the more secure and more reliable authentication methods, because users just want to take too much time to authentication and for security, but they really want to work. And in the best case, authenticate once and then forget about the security part and concentrate on the real work. So I think one advantage is really higher security, because the password is transmitted only once. I think this is a sensitive information, your credentials. If you transmit them like every few minutes, enter them in the system and then in another system, it might be secure. If it's not completely secure, it is better to have them transmitted over some like wireless media, not too often. Another reason is one password can be remembered probably, if it's not too long and not too complicated, but like dozens of them, at least I am not able to remember everything. If you have many resources and you have to have one password for each resource, and they should be different and change them every few months and have them complicated and non-guessable and not written down anywhere, it gets complicated to have them all in your memory. And if you have exactly only once, it's, I think, an improvement in security if you give the user a tool to manage this complexity. And I think also an advantage is phishing protection, because if I authenticate, if I give my credentials, my secret password, for example, to the IDPs, and I can check, this is the IDP I know the layout of the site, I maybe know the URL, or I have trust in the certificate, this is doable for some users. If I have to check the certificate chain for every resource I access, I think a lot of more users will not so easily do the task and really check if everything is all right. So it is everywhere a trade-off between user comfortability, to the user needing to be comfortable with the tool, and the security requirements. Of course, there are also disadvantages, and that is a higher risk if you're using SSO. If your one password gets lost, someone who gets it can access any resource and not just one. So the new thing now is a unified SSO. And the new thing is to authenticate once for access to network and application resources. If I go back, the definition before, I had access to multiple resources. In many systems, multiple resources of one type, probably web resources, if you're using serverless. And here you have a little more generic definition. This is especially for the networks, then for web applications, and then for also other applications. And this USSO is building on Adrome because it is quite available infrastructure for getting wireless access all over Europe. And Adrome is federated secure access, but only to network resources. And Edugain is confederated secure access to web resources and also other resources, as we have seen in the presentations before, to more complicated systems. So both of these systems are deployed or in the process of being deployed, and I think it makes sense to see this by both times we have the federated approach, we have similar requirements, and it makes sense to look how they can be coupled. This is a rather abstract view on our architecture for unified single sign-on that we propose. You see in the blue the Adrome confederation. This is the radius part where you're talking 802.1x and all the network layer protocols. You see the user's device talking to an access point. So you start, if you're doing 802.1x on layer 2, then you have radius server in the visitor domain and in the home domain. But then this is coupled in two ways to the Edugain configuration. This is the yellow part on the bottom. Edugain is the world of the web with HTTP and SOAP, and SAML is quite usual there. And normally you use different tools and different clients. You use a browser. And these two worlds are now coupled on two places. One is the home domain, where the radius is connected to the IDP of the web API. For example, the radius can talk to a serverless IDP. And I think this makes sense because the real user identity is not necessarily specific for the technology used to transporting it or for the resources that are to be accessed with it. In principle, I'm a user at some institution and I have some entitlement, and this is sensible for Adrome or for Edugain as well. And the other link is on the user's device, because the information that I'm logged in to one configuration needs to be transported and done in a way that the other configurations, the other higher layers, can interpret it and not enforce me to enter my password again and again. What you also see on this picture is that we decided to use SAML for both federations for our unified single sign-on. We have a way to pack SAML, a SAML assertion, and we authenticate just as normal with ADROAM, and then we create a SAML assertion as usual, saying, as a SAML assertion can say, this user has been authenticated, this user has been authenticated using this method, and by whom, and such things. And then we transport this message over the normal ADROAM infrastructure, and it arrives on the user's device and can be used like similar to a shibboleth cookie. This user has been signed on and he doesn't have to give his credentials anymore. What are the advantages? Why would anyone want to use a combination of these two systems? I think most of all you have the SSO advantages, but they extended to another layer, to the network layer. Additionally, you could solve or at least simplify the wave problem. We have seen before it can be a non-trivial task to choose where you are from if you are not thinking about a very small scenario, but like a Europe-wide AI and have to choose, I want to now log in with these credentials from this institution, and there can be quite a lot of institutions. And if you log into ADROAM, you are having done this already. So it would save time to not to have repeatedly select where you really are from. In the ADROAM way, you enter the string like your email address. So we could reuse this information. Another advantage is it is usable for non-web resources and services. For example, the term grid. The shibboleth and related AIs only use a browser as a tool, which is, of course, nice because it is pre-installed and most users know it. But there are other protocols and other tools that do not work over HTTP. So it is not always the only choice to use a browser. And we have a use case, for example, when talking to a grid service that we tried as a use case and deployed it, and it showed quite nicely that it's will be able to work in this way too. And I think another advantage of our approach is really that we are based on Edugain because we are not restricting us to a specific type of middleware. We have a testbed with shibboleth, but parts are as well working with PAPI, that is non-SAML based, for example. So this is quite flexible. There are two disadvantages of USSO. Of course, you need some additional component on the client. You need some middleware that is able to do this task. Unfortunately, our USSO approach is not pre-built into any operating system. So we are not Microsoft and can say any idea is pre-built, but this is something that has to be installed. It's quite simple to install, but some software is needed. And it requires, of course, ADROAM and some AI, which is, in our case, not so much of a problem because ADROAM is available already, and the AI is in the process of being built and will very soon be available. So that is not too much of a disadvantage, I think. In our unified single sign-on, we will have 6 steps. We will authenticate at layer 2 with 802.1x using ADROAM. And then a token will be transported over this ADROAM. It will arrive at the user's device, put into a secure store. And after that, the normal process of getting the network access, then only the user gets his IP address, and then the authentication to the application layer can take place. This is then done by using Edugain. The token is then used as a proof of authentication. This is not with any user interaction that is needed. The first part has been developed in our project. This is a Dane project. This is done by the University of Murcia. And I will more detail the second new part. This is the authentication at the application layer. And this is using edugain, and then how we use this token to authenticate. We need some token. We call it in our thinking, in our designs, we call it edu token, similar to eduroam and edugain. It must express the following things, which are who has been authenticated. Of course, it needs some subject. It should also include when the authentication was done. You are not authenticated forever. And then very important is by whom, because you trust this IDP, this identity provider. Just in the Shibboleth, it is the same concept. And then it would also be nice to know which method was used. There can be one providing a higher or lower level of security, and then also, of course, how long the token then is valid. It could be like minutes or hours, days, it is open. When I now look how a SAML1 assertion with an authentication statement looks like, we have one issuer, we have an issue instant, we have a condition, not on or after. We have an authentication statement in this special kind of assertion. That has an authentication instant and method, and we have a subject, that's the name and identifier. And that is, if you look back, exactly the thing that we want to express with our token. And if, as SAML is a language that edugain was using already, it was easy to choose this as a format for our token. This token is then digitally signed, and that is done by a trusted entity, so we can assert that this token has not been modified and it has been issued by someone trusted in the Confederation. Basically, the edu token is just a SAML assertion containing an authentication statement. That was our idea for the token. Now how to use this token. The token has now received on my device. It is stored in a secure storage. I have some client that is using it. First of all, I need a browser because I want to use it in a simple case for web SSO. This browser in our current implementation needs a kind of Java plugin, which is not too hard a requirement, I think. And we need a dedicated client. This is called Token Manager. This is a normal Java application. This is everything you need on a user's device. In a service domain, you need some components. Of course, you need a service provider. This in the current prototype can be, for example, a Shibboleth service provider. There are no modifications, just a plain 1.3 Shibboleth service provider. You need to install a certain applet. This is rather simple to install, as any applet. And you need a certain remote bridging element. It has been presented what a bridging element was before. I will explain a little bit again in the next slides. This is a modified element, and it's a remote edugain bridging element. What exactly it does, I will show now. You have this profile. You see on the left side the user's device, and on the right side the service provider domain. You don't see any identity provider domain because the authentication has been done over eduroam. So we no longer need any interaction with the IDP in the simple case. Then you have on the user's side browser requesting access to some resource. It goes to the SP. As usual, this is redirected. Normally, we would have an IDP. In the edugain case, we first have the remote bridging element. And then we are not talking to somewhere home. We are talking back. because in the authentication, this is a special thing, is now stored on the user's device and not performed by talking to somewhere else. So we need a way to talk back. In this case, we chose the way of an applet. An applet is just something that can be simply sent back, can be executed in the browser, and have some more complex operations to perform. And that was what we needed. We need some way that the browser can somehow read this thing that is stored basically in your file system somehow, and an applet, if it is signed, can do this. This applet then contacts the USSO client, the token manager. The token is decrypted if it's needed. The token is then returned, and inside the normal HTTP post is sent to the remote bridging element. The remote bridging element then does what the bridging elements of Edugain always do. They validate the token. As it has been explained, they see this is a valid SAML, the conditions, it is still, the time to live has not expired. They check the signature and they check the certificate chain that it has been done by a trusted entity. And then they produce an assertion, a new one. In the shibboleth example, it's in the shibboleth format, and send it to the SP. So the SP is thinking he is talking to a usual IDP. And the SP then gives access. So you see the profile is not very different from the service provider view. The new things are implemented in the Edugain bridging element, for most importantly because of the reason that there are currently very few bridging elements. So they can be installed to have one bridging element for a complete federation. And it is rather easy to modify this, to reinstall it, and then enable the USSO, and not to enforce any shibboleth service provider, which can be quite a lot of more installations to update there. And additionally, of course, we have again the Edugain feature that we have the ability to talk to many middlewares and not only to the shibboleth middleware. So again, the bridging element. This is a central part that is new on the service provider side. Edugain bridging elements map the local federation language to the Edugain language. In the shibboleth case, it's not too complicated because you map SAML to SAML. You have in both cases some specific issues, but it is not too complicated. But there are other federations who are not talking SAML, and other projects, as we have seen, who are not directly interoperating with shibboleth. And they can be central per federation or distributed, so we have the flexibility here. And very important, they are part of the Edugain circle of trust, so they can act as a trusted provider of assertion. This is needed, so the SPs can really have some entity that is able to validate our tokens. The RBE, we have in Edugain we have two BEs. We have one at the home side and one at the remote side, and in our case we only are looking at the remote bridging element. And this is talking towards the SP like an IDP. There's not much of a noticeable difference. And towards Edugain it talks to the home BE, so its normal task is talking, is the cross-federation part. And our RBE is not so different. It is not really talking towards Edugain, if we are, except in the attribute pull case. But the new part is that it's really talking back. It is talking to the client. And in this case, we have chosen to do this a simple way as a prototype implementation, and we are using a signed Java applet. And we need just any active component that is able to reach outside the browser. Of course, it is a kind of complicated thing because normally you are reluctant to have active components within your browser that are able to reach outside. But if your token is coming to you over eduroam, you need some way to make eduroam talk to the browser world. So at least a certain clearly defined hole is needed. And there are quite a lot of things that you can choose. You can have many specific elements. For example, in the Internet Explorer, we choose one that is platform and browser independent and have now a Java applet. In the architecture, you can choose different implementations. Currently, for implementation and deployment, it's not too complicated. You end up with a Tomcat. There is one Java servlet that is a modified RBE. You need a certain Java key store containing the trust anchor, and you need an applet that is able to do this token fetching, this talking back to the client. The conclusion. This implementation currently provides a unified single sign-on. So similar to the eduroam motto, you can open your laptop and then be signed on. Not only get access to the network, but get access to your applications. And the concept and the architecture in principle, this has not yet been implemented, enables a simplified where are you from. Because no IDP interaction is necessary, I think an enhanced privacy is possible. It is not necessary to see really where you are from live, but you are from somewhere trusted. And you have also possibilities for SSO with non-web applications or even for locally installed applications. Okay. This was my conclusions.
Questions? Comments?
Yes.
Well, the first conclusion is this. Well, does everyone in the room think that having the infrastructure that allows just opening a laptop and get access to all of the services, does everyone think this is a good idea? Well, I've got three network-enabled devices on me. If I lose just one, anyone who gets it can get to all of the services on behalf of me. Don't you think this is a risk? Anyone else? Is it okay with everyone?
Well, maybe talk as everyone.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't see any reactions.
That depends first on the service, second on the security report on your application. Is everyone happy having, for example, your personal data in a machine that you can lose? Is everyone happy having your account identification in a machine that you can lose? Is everyone happy having something that can go against your bank account in your pocket? Why not? Is this comfortable?
Okay, Diego, that was the question for the presenters. But thank you for the response anyway. Well, okay. So, Sasha, are you going to react or?
Sorry?
Are you going to react or not?
Yes, I'm think, okay, the motto is a bit advertising, of course. I mean, the way I'm using eduroam is not open my laptop and be online. I have to enter my password first. So this is a bit simplified. Okay, you have to enter the password once. And I think this is not a system for guys maybe like us, but for the lazy users. And I think it is better to have a SSO solution that tries to take a little bit of the task of the not so security conscious users and make life for them simpler and still preserve some security than like making users use, like, for example, the Firefox password automated filler or something like using the password everywhere the same. So I think this is the same argumentation for SSO is not so different for USSO.
Well, I think that's the difference. The difference is that users are usually used to just open the laptop because the password or the credentials are somewhere on the disk. That was my point. So if you try to provide them something more comfortable, they will use the feature again. We are talking about the common users, not about us. Oh, that's my point. But can I have another question, please? Could we go like 2 slides back for the flow?
This one?
No. It's the same still. Oh, you see something different than me, probably.
Can you synchronize?
Oh.
Okay, this one. Yeah. My question is, where are the attributes being passed?
Not yet. In the current, we are doing authentication currently without attributes, because we are basing currently the implementation is based on the current implementation of the chivalrous bridging element, and the current edugain chivalrous bridging element is not yet able to do attribute pull. In the original architecture, we were thinking of attribute pull, and this would mean then from the service provider domain in the almost the last step, contacting home and asking for attributes. The new version of this would be, of what I learned, would be also the new chivalrous way of thinking of including the attribute already in the token.
So they're going to be in the token?
This would be a probable
new then the natural question, where the filtering is going to take the place?
Which kind
the
of
attribute filtering?
You mean the attribute release policy?
Something like that. And the targeted IDs?
You can have the attribute release policy at your home domain before you get the token.
You don't know what application I'm going to access with the token?
Yes. Then you would need a way to deal with, for example, multiple tokens.
I'm sorry?
To deal with multiple tokens. You can have more anonymous tokens with less attributes, and you can have more complicated. This would be a more elaborate version of this architecture.
No comment. Thank you.
No, it's about looking the edu token and all the like. It was something that somehow reminds me the idea of the Microsoft idea of InfoCard, which is so implemented as well in Mozilla and all the like. What do you think about the possibility of using this kind of interface? Would be really useful for users to get let's say, sort of a card coming from the network connection to be used, so they will retain some control about it.
I think if we had a built-in GUI for that gets an info card from eduroam, and the user then can select between many of his info cards and select the one coming from eduroam and select any other, would be of course nice. But I don't know too much of the internal detail of the info card, of the card space protocol, if this is possible. From the GUI point of view, what I've currently seen is quite nice. But I don't know how easily they can be put together. It can be easy, it can be complicated. I don't know.
Any other question? Well, we have done very well. Pretty in time, so thank you all, and thank you to our speech guests.